Nobody anticipated that the wealthiest person on Earth would be brought into court like an ordinary individual, yet that's precisely what occurred when Elon Musk walked into the courtroom, met by the intense, authoritative stare of Judge Roberts. The atmosphere crackled with strain. Outside, media cameras sparked to life while protesters and supporters assembled around the courthouse, their voices colliding in a tumultuous mix of chants and slogans. However, within the courtroom, every gaze was fixed on a single figure, Musk. The setting felt like a scene from a suspense film, with journalists furiously typing on their laptops, each keystroke racing to capture the gravity of the unfolding events. The court officer stood resolute, and at the center of it all was Judge Roberts, serious, attentive, and clearly unamused. He had a reputation in legal circles for his strict, no-nonsense stance, particularly toward those he felt were exploiting the system or acting as if they were above the law. Despite his fame and fortune, Elon Musk would receive no special treatment. When Musk entered, gone were his usual smirk or lighthearted social media quips. He appeared calm, grave, and unusually reserved. Wearing a sharp navy suit, he gave a subtle nod to his legal team before settling at the defense table. No cameras were permitted inside, yet the tension was so palpable it seemed to seep through the walls. This wasn't a case of a failed business deal or a minor penalty. Rather, it was about holding someone accountable at the highest echelon. Judge Roberts had summoned Musk to face allegations that many thought could reshape how billionaires are viewed by the justice system. The accusations, still under intense examination, involved claims of abusing market influence, deceiving public investors, and actions that ventured into unethical, not merely illegal territory. The court clerk signaled the start of the proceedings, and Judge Roberts leaned in, his gaze piercing. "Mr. Musk," he said with measured composure, "you may wield immense influence, but in my courtroom, that power stops at the entrance." A wave of gasps swept through the room. Elon remained unfazed. His lead lawyer, a seasoned gray-haired expert in major corporate lawsuits, stood to present the defense team. Judge Roberts stayed quiet, showing no signs of being swayed. There would be no secret agreements or leniency here. This wasn't Silicon Valley. This was a federal court, and Judge Roberts meant to show Musk and the world that even the mightiest can be brought down if the law requires it. As the opening arguments commenced, it was evident that the courtroom battle was just starting, yet no one could have foreseen how intense it would become, or that by the end, Elon Musk would be let out under the judge's orders, who now stared at him sternly from the bench, and even more astonishingly, what Musk said just before exiting would stun everyone into silence. The room transitioned from quiet to soft whispers as the prosecution stood, their demeanor inscrutable yet assured. This was the moment everyone had been anticipating. What could possibly drag someone like Elon Musk into court, let alone put him at risk of being ousted by a federal judge? The lead prosecutor, a poised woman named Amelia Grant, stepped toward the jury with a quiet intensity. Her tone was steady, but each word sliced through the courtroom like a knife. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she started, "this case isn't about innovation or achievement. It's about accountability, about what happens when unchecked power descends into misuse." She pointed toward Musk without glancing at him. "Mr. Musk is charged with intentionally manipulating the stock market, leveraging his platform and influence, not merely through business tactics, but via public statements crafted to incite volatility for his own benefit." Screens illuminated the courtroom as digital evidence was shown. Tweet after tweet appeared, some enigmatic, some daring, all shared by Musk during pivotal financial moments. One tweet stood out in particular: "Thinking of taking Tesla private at $420, funding secured." The courtroom had encountered it before, but today it was more than just contentious. It was evidence. "It might seem like a jest on the surface," Grant remarked, gesturing to the tweet. "But that day, billions of dollars shifted, investors lost millions, some gained fortunes, and Mr. Musk observed the chaos he had knowingly sparked." She then presented internal Tesla emails revealing employee confusion and worry after Musk's tweets. Some indicated they were unaware of such plans, while others dreaded legal repercussions. The emails were filled with anxiety, and that anxiety now served as proof. But the accusations didn't end with market manipulation. There were murmurs, now openly stated, about Musk's dealings with government officials, steering policy talks to favor his company. There were records, meetings lacking full transparency, and messages hinting at an influence operation concealed beneath charisma and innovation. Judge Roberts raised his eyebrows at times, but largely kept a stoic expression. Still, the gravity of the evidence was irrefutable. Musk sat motionless, his eyes slightly squinted, absorbing every detail presented. Then came the bombshell. The claim that Musk had misused confidential research from a lesser-known subsidiary to sway decisions at SpaceX, decisions that might impact national security partnerships. Though still under investigation, its mere mention sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Jury members exchanged glances, some showing early signs of unease. Outside the courthouse, the public was in an uproar. News was spreading faster than it could be contained. The prosecution wrapped up, "This isn't about penalizing success. It's about safeguarding integrity. No one, regardless of brilliance, wealth, or admiration, is above the law." The silence that ensued was more oppressive than anything prior. Elon Musk slowly lifted his gaze, not toward the judge or jury, but directly at Amelia Grant, and in that silent look, a tempest was brewing. Once the prosecution concluded, whispers spread through the courtroom like waves after a pebble hits the water. All attention turned to Elon Musk. The room grew taut with expectation. Would he stay quiet, letting his legal team handle things? Or would the world's most mysterious tech giant speak for himself? To everyone's astonishment, including his lawyers, Musk stood up. Judge Roberts raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Musk, do you wish to speak?" "I do, Your Honor, with the court's permission," Musk replied, his voice steady yet resonant with impact. The judge permitted it, an uncommon decision, especially in a high-stakes case where every word could sway public opinion like an avalanche. Musk stepped forward, free from notes or screens, and looked directly at the jury. "I'm not a saint," he started, "but I'm not a villain either." The courtroom went still. "Yes, I've made daring statements. Some were jests, some were hopeful aspirations, but they were never lies meant to deceive. They stemmed from a place of risk, vision, and sometimes a desperate need to break through. Inertia." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I tweet as I think. Impulsively, carelessly, sometimes foolishly. But in a world where CEOs hide behind PR teams and legal barriers, I chose openness. I chose to speak directly to the public. To investors, to visionaries. People in the back rows leaned in, engrossed. I am guilty of dreaming too grandly," he went on, his voice growing louder, "of believing that one person, one team, one company could propel humanity forward. Yes, I disrupted markets, but not for greed, for advancement." He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, if this court is punishing boldness, then I am guilty. But if it's seeking criminal intent, manipulation, or abuse of power, then I am misunderstood." His lawyer finally stood to support Musk's legal arguments, methodically debunking the accusations one by one. The notorious funding-secured tweet, supported by internal talks with international investors, perhaps hasty but not falsified. The internal Tesla emails, situational, showing doubt but not rejection of the proposal. The alleged misuse of national data, entirely baseless, with no official source verifying it as a violation. The defense's tone changed the room's atmosphere. A tech analyst in the audience live tweeted, "Musk just turned the courtroom into a TED Talk." Outside the courthouse, the crowd swelled. Protesters held signs reading, "Free the future," and "You can't jail innovation." Others shouted, "Accountability for all." The streets turned into a clash of ideologies. Back inside, Judge Roberts stayed impartial, but even he couldn't ignore the charisma Musk brought to the room. The defense concluded with the tension palpable, then came the unexpected moment. Musk turned to the public gallery and declared, "I may be on trial, but so is the notion that boldness should be punished." A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Musk sat down, hands folded. The courtroom was no longer just a venue for legal disputes. It had become a stage for ideological debate, where law met ambition, and justice had to decide between order and vision. The silence in the courtroom was overwhelming after Musk's fervent speech. Judge Roberts, known for his calm demeanor and precise judgment, appeared slightly rattled by the tech mogul's defense. His hands rested on the arms of his chair as he absorbed Musk's words. It was rare for someone like Roberts to be affected by a defendant's rhetoric. But here was Musk, a billionaire with an unshakable faith in his vision, challenging everything Roberts had ever upheld in the judicial system. Though the judge remained still, his thoughts raced. He had dealt with CEOs, politicians, and billionaires before, but Musk was unique. He wasn't just a rich man navigating corporate law. He was a revolutionary force who had upended the norm, and now he was seeking absolution in a courtroom for that very disruption. Could a judge be influenced by passion, charisma, and an unwavering belief in one's mission? Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy escalated. News vans lined the streets and reporters eagerly awaited each update. Musk's defense had become the focal point of every news outlet. Analysts debated the impact of his words, some calling it a brilliant PR move, others accusing him of trying to sway public opinion. But amid the chaos, there were murmurs of respect. Musk's approach was unconventional, but it had captured the imagination of millions. The courtroom became an extension of the public arena, a place where business, politics, and law collided in a dramatic, unpredictable spectacle. Social media erupted with hashtags like Musk for Freedom and Disrupt the Court, while others debated his actions on forums. Was he a visionary breaking free from a flawed system, or a reckless billionaire who had crossed the line? Back in the courtroom, Judge Roberts glanced up from his notes, briefly locking eyes with Musk. It wasn't just about the law anymore, it was about legacy. The ruling he made could shape how future generations of tech entrepreneurs, innovators, and dreamers would be treated by the justice system. For the first time, Roberts' usual composure wavered, his mind torn between the principles of law and the reality of Musk's position. The courtroom had become a battleground of ideas, where the traditional legal system was being confronted by a man who represented the new age of technology and ambition. The prosecution swiftly responded to Musk's passionate defense, emphasizing the gravity of his actions. Their argument was straightforward. Musk had intentionally misled investors, manipulated stock prices, and endangered the economy, all for personal gain. His tweets weren't mere spontaneous thoughts, they were calculated and reckless actions that shook the financial system's foundation. But the media storm outside was impossible to ignore. The hashtag Elon trial was trending globally. Celebrities, influencers, and even former employees of Musk's companies shared their views. Some supported Musk, arguing his boldness was exactly what the world needed, while others condemned his lack of accountability, insisting no one should be above the law, regardless of their vision. Inside the courtroom, Judge Roberts began to feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. He wasn't just judging a man, he was shaping the future of what it meant to be a disruptive force in modern society. Could someone like Musk, with his unrestrained ambition and unorthodox methods, ever truly conform to the boundaries of the law? The day of the final verdict arrived. The courtroom was steeped in an anticipation heavier than ever before. As Judge Roberts entered, the room fell silent, everyone eager to hear the outcome of the trial that had gripped the world's attention for weeks. The stakes were immense. A multi-billion-dollar empire was at risk. But so was the future of how society would perceive and regulate the actions of the world's richest individuals. Musk sat at the defendant's table, his expression a mask of calm despite the storm, of criticism, protests, and mounting pressure. He had remained steadfast. His defense team had portrayed him as a misunderstood innovator, someone who had merely pushed the boundaries of what was possible, even if it meant bending the law. His supporters, those who viewed him as a pioneer of progress, continued to stand by him, anxiously awaiting the final ruling. Judge Roberts, with a stern look, prepared to speak. After careful consideration of all the evidence, testimonies, and arguments presented, this court finds Elon Musk guilty of financial manipulation, insider trading, and other related charges. A collective gasp reverberated through the courtroom. Musk's supporters were shocked, while the opposition exhaled in relief. It appeared justice had been served, but the verdict wasn't as straightforward as it seemed. As the judge continued, his tone softened. However, given the extraordinary circumstances, the impact of Musk's technological innovations, and his charitable efforts towards space exploration and clean energy, the court hereby imposes a sentence of probation rather than incarceration. The room fell silent, as if everyone were grappling with the full implications of the decision. A multi-billion-dollar fortune, groundbreaking technologies, and a legacy that would endure for centuries, all of it now teetered on the edge. Musk's expression remained unreadable. He knew the legal fight wasn't over. He had escaped prison, but his reputation had taken a severe hit, and the trial's consequences would likely haunt him for years. But something else was stirring. Just as Judge Roberts was about to close the case, an unforeseen event unfolded that no one could have anticipated. The courtroom doors swung open, and a young woman, previously unknown to the public, entered. She was an anonymous whistleblower who had worked closely with Musk's companies and possessed intimate knowledge of their inner workings. "I have new evidence," she declared, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. The room fell quiet once more. All attention turned to her. She presented a stack of documents, handing them to the judge. The courtroom was now enveloped in a new wave of uncertainty. What did this new evidence reveal? Could it change everything? Judge Roberts hesitated, examining the papers with a mix of confusion and curiosity. Musk's defense team reacted swiftly, but it was clear this unexpected development could unravel all they had fought for in the trial. The room hummed with the energy of the unknown, and no one could predict where this new twist would lead. Would it clear Musk's name, or would it bring even more damaging revelations to light? The trial's final moments were about to unfold in a way no one could have foreseen. The courtroom stood on the brink, ready to dive into a new chapter of mystery, secrets, and revelations. What was contained in those documents, and would Musk be able to continue his path, or was this merely the start of his downfall? The atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted from tense expectation to a chaotic swirl of confusion. Everyone, from the defense attorneys to the prosecutors, was now fixated on the young woman who had just entered with the explosive evidence. The silence following her arrival was deafening, as if the world itself had paused to take in what was about to happen. The documents she presented could alter everything, the entire trajectory of the trial, and potentially even Elon Musk's future. Judge Roberts, appearing more perplexed than ever, scanned the documents in his hands. His usual calm demeanor had been replaced by a hint of uncertainty. The defense team quickly gathered, whispering urgently among themselves. They knew this new evidence could either exonerate Musk or plunge him deeper into legal peril than anyone had imagined. Musk's legal team immediately tried to dismiss the documents, arguing they were irrelevant or tampered with, but the judge, after a prolonged pause, overruled them. These will be reviewed, and we will adjourn briefly for the prosecution and defense to examine these files in detail. As the judge's gavel resounded in the courtroom, murmurs of speculation arose. The young woman who had remained in the shadows until now stepped forward to explain her role. She was a former employee of Musk's companies, a talented data scientist who had worked closely on Musk's most ambitious projects. She had stayed silent throughout the trial, but now something had driven her to speak out. "I worked for Musk's companies for several years, during which I gained access to sensitive data and internal communications that raised serious concerns," she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "What I found could change everything you think you know about this case." The prosecutor, already sensing the implications, leaned forward. "What exactly is in these documents?" With a grave tone, the young woman disclosed that she had uncovered evidence indicating that several of Musk's high-profile innovations, including some of the most publicized product launches and tech investments, weren't as original as they seemed. In fact, many of the key patents and technologies Musk's companies had claimed were based on ideas and research secretly copied or stolen from other companies and individuals. Additionally, she alleged that Musk had deliberately manipulated market values through insider trading tactics, using privileged information to make decisions that benefited him and his companies, while leaving thousands of smaller investors at a disadvantage. The revelations were staggering. This was no longer just a case of financial mismanagement or illicit deals. It was a systemic manipulation of the market and the tech industry at large. The courtroom descended into chaos. Everyone was on edge, struggling to grasp the magnitude of what had just been revealed. Musk, who had been so confident moments earlier, now sat motionless, his gaze fixed on the floor. His defense team scrambled to formulate a response, but it was evident that this new development would challenge everything they had built during the trial. As the judge reviewed the documents, the weight of the moment became clear. The future of Musk's empire was now in serious jeopardy, and the world watched with bated breath as this unprecedented twist unfolded. Would these shocking revelations mark the end of Musk's career, or would he somehow manage to emerge unscathed once again? The courtroom was in disarray, and the fate of one of the world's most powerful men hung by a thread. The courtroom hummed with hushed conversations, a mix of disbelief, shock, and curiosity permeating the air. The revelation of the bombshell. Evidence had sent shockwaves through every corner of the legal world, but now the moment of truth had arrived. The judge, his face pale and thoughtful, raised his gavel once more, silencing the room. "We will now proceed to closing statements," Judge Roberts declared, his voice steady despite the chaos around him, but even his composed exterior couldn't mask the intensity of what had just transpired. This case, once thought to be straightforward, had become one of the most complex and high-profile trials of the decade. Musk's defense team was visibly shaken. The powerful revelations from the young whistleblower had cracked their solid defense. They tried desperately to discredit the new evidence, claiming it was fabricated or the work of a disgruntled former employee. But despite their efforts, the flaws in their argument were becoming too obvious to overlook. The prosecutor, now bolstered by the new evidence, delivered a closing statement that hit at the core of the case. "The evidence presented today is not just circumstantial, it's damning. What we have learned is that Elon Musk, a man idolized by millions, may have built his empire on deception, manipulation, and the exploitation of others. It is time for the truth to be revealed and for the world to see Musk for what he truly is." Musk, who had been sitting in his seat, looking as though he had aged a decade in mere hours, finally spoke up, his voice once so confident, now wavering. "This is a setup," he proclaimed, his eyes flashing with the familiar arrogance that had made him a tech billionaire. "I built everything from the ground up. These accusations are false, and I'll fight them with everything I have." But the damage was already done. As the prosecutor continued, the weight of the evidence was undeniable. The jury, once divided on their views of Musk, now found themselves leaning toward the compelling case before them. The world watched as this monumental trial neared its conclusion. The jury deliberated for what felt like an eternity. When they returned, the verdict was swift and clear. Guilty on multiple counts of fraud, insider trading, and intellectual property theft. The courtroom erupted into chaos as the judge announced the sentence. Elon Musk's once shining empire was collapsing before his eyes. The trial had not only exposed his legal violations, but also revealed the flaws in the public image he had. Carefully crafted, from tech mogul to convicted felon in one swift motion, Musk's career seemed permanently damaged. In the aftermath, the media couldn't get enough of the story. Headlines blared, "Elon Musk's fall from grace," while social media exploded with reactions from fans and critics alike. Was this the end of Musk's dominance in the tech world? Could he rebuild his reputation, or would he face the consequences of his actions? As for the young whistleblower, her actions had made her a hero to some and a target to others. Her decision to speak out had forever altered the course of this trial, and perhaps even the future of the tech industry. But one thing was certain. The consequences of this trial would echo for years to come, changing the lives of everyone involved. The fall of Elon Musk was not just the downfall of a billionaire, but a cautionary tale for anyone who believed they were beyond the reach of the law.